All right. Well, welcome everybody to this little live lesson. Today I'm going to be painting this hummingbird here, and I'm using acrylic paint. Hopefully I have enough paint out, but if I don't, that's fine. I'll add more. And this is one of these wood panels, and it was a really rough surface, so I added a bit of gray to some acrylic gesso and just this is the gesso I used, and I just added a little bit of gray paint and kind of put a layer over it because I accidentally bought some of these rough surface ones. And yeah, so anyways, long story short, I just thought I'll use it for this demo because it's not something I, normally use. So, you can see I've tried to put my reference in the video because I always hear that the video, people want to see what I'm painting. So, and I agree, but it's just always hard to set things up. Today I'm using this little drawing board that I got on Amazon so that I could paint sitting more normal and not like hunched over my over my painting and I get a sore neck and it's hard to see. So anyhow, I've got out here some alizarin for the hummingbird's little, its little, red chest there under the beak. And then I've got out some different shades of red. So quinacridone, I'm going to use that in the flowers. And I've got cad red medium. And I've got burnt umber. This is raw sienna, transparent burnt sienna, uh, viridian green, sap green, and yellow. And I'm going to try to keep this simple. I always say that, and then I end up making it too complicated. But I'll just use a little bit of this burnt umber uh, for sketching. So when you sketch a hummingbird, one of the things that you got to watch out for is it's spread out a lot because you got the wings and the beak is so long. So I kind of on a square panel like this, I kind of want to look at my reference photo and you can see how it lines up the, you know, the wingtip to the tail. So you kind of look for things like that. And so the wing's a little shorter. And then you've got this other wing over here, and then the beak is, probably like all the way over there. So yeah, it's a little tricky, but you kind of just sort of work with it. Oh, and this blue up here is some ultra marine blue. So, all right, I'm just gonna get that little, and I'm just always looking at kind of the angle, the angle of the beak, and always when you're drawing, just look at them as shapes and angles. So I'm just kind of gonna mark in the little, it's got a little cute little belly there, and you can always dab some of that paint off if you don't like how wide that beak looks, but it doesn't need to be perfect because you paint the background around it. So you've got this little wing here, and this little wing going off here, and the little tail. Okay, and so just sort of gonna shape that head a little bit more. And the beak is kind of curved. And then I want to put in some of those flowers, so get some of that quinacridone. And the reason I use quinacridone is just because it has a, when you mix it with white, you get a really nice pink. And just try to keep it really, keep it real loose for the beginning. Later you can get into all the details. All right, so now I'm just gonna start getting more. I'm gonna work on, making sure I get the eyes in correctly and everything. So I'm using, for that, I'll use these Zen brushes are really good from Michaels for, a little inexpensive brush. So I'll get a little dab of this black and just make sure I don't have a lot of water on there. And kind of go in here. And I'm looking at my reference and just sort of put in where that little, roughly where I see it. I always end up looking later and going, oh, that's in the wrong spot. I can already tell it's too close to the beak. So I've got to move her eye a little more. Okay, and while I have that on my brush, I'm just gonna darken the beak I want to see. Okay, now get a little larger brush. I find it hard on these rougher surfaces to use a small brush. Just sort of it's just too. So I'm mixing a little Viridian and some of that burnt umber. I normally use transparent brown oxide, but it's not readily available in places that people mainly get their supplies, like Michael's and everything. So just I'm kind of using that. So I'm just gonna block in where there's some green, and don't mind that it's a little bit darker because then later I'll add the nice highlights to it. So I'm just gonna go around and put in a little bit of that green. It's kind of like creating a little bit of a map for yourself when you're painting. And then for the wings, they look kind of gray. So I'm going to take some of this ultramarine blue and a little bit of that burnt umber. And I can just block in. And this is another little Michaels brush. This is just a 1/2 inch wide wash brush. And I'm making that mark for the wing by just sort of kind of putting my brush down and then pulling it along the way the wing kind of goes. That way you kind of get that shape already in the brush stroke. And this is more of a beginner's level, so I'm trying to make it real simple. Maybe you can add a little more burnt umber to make it more gray, and then just sort of go and do the same And there's this little kind of triangular shape in the wing there. You can always darken that and then add the wings into it. And some of those little tail feathers, you can put in a few of those. All right, so now I can start working on adding some of the highlights, but I'm going to let that sort of dry a bit and go back to my flowers. So for the flowers, I'll add a little bit of the sap green and some cad yellow light here, and just use a little bit of water, and I'll just sort of block in some of those leaf shapes. And you have some that are a little darker, so just use some sap and some of that transparent burnt sienna. Can't keep track of these colors. The names of them are so, I don't usually use these ones. I've kind of substituted my red oxide for the transparent burnt sienna because for some reason they just don't carry readily these colors that I normally use. So I'm trying to make it, everyone's like, I can't find those colors. So trying to adapt and make it a little simpler. So, you know, the flowers are a lot more complicated in the reference photo, but you know, I'm just trying to keep it simple here. So I'm kind of gonna combine some. Just make it look like it's coming up to a little bush or something. All right, and you can get into the details more later, but just kind of put some more leafy shapes. Okay, and then I can go and get a little more of that cad yellow light and a little bit of white here and put in some lighter highlights on some of them. Just sort of, you can leave some of the underpaint. Like that. And then we'll come back to that. I'm going to get some of this quinacridone red again and just sort of go and put a few more, you know, I don't want them to be super realistic or anything, but you can kind of just give the edges a little more shape. They're more there just, you know, to set the stage for the hummingbird. So I hope that you're enjoying this. Everyone who's watching the live stream, thanks for joining me. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe or share it with a friend. Trying to grow my YouTube channel and Patreon members get copies of this video with the reference photo, and it's a big support to me to become a monthly subscriber to my Patreon. But if you don't want to do that, I really appreciate you just liking and sharing my video with a friend. So I'm just going to keep on. You can see it's getting a little more dimension when you add different values like that. You've got some dark and light values, you right away start to get more shape. And then there's a few little ones that you can. And then I'll get some more white in there to make that pink. And just add a few real nice little highlights to some of them. Add a little more white. And this is acrylic paint that I'm using, and so it doesn't, it's one of the bonuses is that it dries quickly, but then also it's a little harder to blend. So you kind of, especially when you have a drier climate or it's hotter out wherever you are. So you can see they're flowers, but I'm just enjoying the kind of abstract nature of it, just doing these kind of flowery shapes. If you wanted to go and, switch to a little different brush, whatever brush you can work with, you can go to something like this little round brush here and got something on it and really get into details later on. Just add more dabs of paint here and there just to kind of make them look even more fluffy and frilly. So yeah, I always say do what you can use my painting as a good starting point for your own style. You don't have to paint it the way I'm doing it. It just kind of gets you going, hopefully. Now I'm just gonna go back. I've worked on those flowers some more, and I'm gonna go back now to my little hummingbird here, and I can start adding some more detail. So I'm using one of those Stay Wet palettes, by the way, so underneath here is a sponge, but I still have to spray my paint and hope for the best. Because it's on an angle, I'm really hoping it doesn't run down too fast down my page here. So I'm gonna get a little bit of that pink color again, the quinacridone, because in the photo it looks really pink. The little how to call it, the cheek, I guess. So actually I think I'm going to switch to a smaller brush that's going to really mess things up. So I'm going to go with a little bit of this darker for the shadow, this alizarin, to really darken that in a bit. You see, now you can see the shape of it more. And Then I'm gonna go and I know the photo is really pink. It's probably been, you know, manipulated on Photoshop or something. So I'm just gonna add a little bit of this um, cad red light to it because I want it to look a little different than the flowers. So when I do a demo like this for sure is not my best painting, but I hope that it's more the technique I would do, but it's definitely harder to paint when you're trying to video. So I hope that it's okay though. So I'm just sort of, you can see, blending a little bit as it goes from the dark underneath his little chin to the light. And then I'm gonna go and just, let's see, make sure I can see that eye. So I happen to have this really inexpensive gray that I used for mixing the background. I got this at Michael's. It's this acrylic basics, and it's very handy. Like if you want to just tone your canvas or whatever, it's just kind of, to me it makes sense just to use something that's a less expensive paint. And so I mixed a bit of that in. So you'll see the line because it's like I say, I'm trying to do this at a little bit of a distance so it doesn't, so you don't have my face in the camera, but I'm putting the line in. And don't worry if your line comes out like that. There's a little bit of a white line that goes down. That I wouldn't do. I'll go over that with the black. I was trying to put the highlight, but you need the background in more. So if you make your eye and it goes big like that, don't worry about the edges getting too big. Just go back and get some black on your little tiny brush, and uh, you can shape it from the inside like this. And then we can also shape it from the outside. So I can get some of that. I want to mix a greeny black, so I'll get that viridian and some black, and I'll go in and cut down that line. You see, I can make it quite thin and small by going around the eye. So now it looks like I painted it in really nice and small, which you guys saw me do it live, so you know I didn't. But you can always go back and, fix it like that. So now we went from the dark to the light using some alizarin, and we used some of this cad red. You can even get a few dabs of real bright, red in there just for fun. And then we're going to kind of do the same with the top of his head. So I'll get some of this cad yellow and a little bit of that viridian. I'll start with a little bit of that, and we'll go to put the little bright spot on later, but we're going to add that nice bright little green. And you can add a little more viridian if you feel like it's getting too bright too fast, just sort of go in and add a little more green. And then sort of work that down I'm using the edge of my brush there. And then we can start adding some of that bright green that goes in the reference photo. You can see it goes along his back, and I'm blending it into the red in little tiny kind of lines so it looks like feathers. And then you can kind of go down here, and on the tail there's some brighter green. And this is actually quite dark here with like a black color. So I'll go back in, and with my little brush I'm going to go in detail around the head like that. So now I can go and get a little lighter color here. And there's a real little highlight right here. So, and then same with over here. And I'll add a little bit of that burnt umber just to sort of, it kind of changes a little bit into, you know, a little bit more of a browny grayish colors as it gets to the beak. Same within here, there's some of that more browny color. Now I'm going to go back to that black Viridian mix and sort of go and just sort of tweak the drawing a bit where it gets, he's got this little dark mask around his eye there, and it just gets kind of a bit of a dark shadow on the back there, or it's the way the feathers are, it's sort of darker green. Definitely, this is a rough surface to paint on, so I tried smoothing it down using some gesso, but really I should have sanded it down. That's okay. I'm just gonna jump the gun a little and put a little spark on the little you know, highlight on the eye there, so kind of comes to life a little. All right, we're really going to start to see our friend come to life here, because I'm going to add the lighter chest color. So there's sort of like a shadow, and you can decide, you know, I think it's getting a lot of reflection with the pink and everything. So you could come up with sort of a grayish purple using I've just put out some ultramarine blue today. I didn't put any cobalt blue out, but you could use a little bit of that cad red, and you'll get like a gray that kind of almost has a bit of a purple tone. And see what we got. Maybe I want less white in the initial. So it makes a nice kind of gray. They call it, one teacher I had called it elephant gray. And you can put a bit of that in. Comes up to about here. And you can even, let's see what even a little darker mixture. Because I like things to be more colorful, so I'll tend to, instead of doing like the dark browny gray color, I'll just decide I'm gonna do more of a purpley gray, just for fun. And then get some of that white, and you can put in some of those lighter feathers. They kind of go all the way up here. And this surface is really unforgiving. It kind of sucks the paint in right away, so I don't really have any time to blend it. But if you're using a normal canvas that you kind of pre-gesso, you should be fine. Okay, now I want to mix a warmer white highlight because that's really cool. So I'm going to get a white and this raw sienna color and just sort of start to add some. I have some, I'll use this medium. I put out a little bit of this liquid medium in the corner here. It's just, they call it glazing liquid. It's the same thing as, you know, varnish. It's all the same. So I'm just going to put a bit of that out there. Helps it spread a little bit easier too. And just sort of add some of those highlights. And then you can mix some, a little bit of that other color in with it and just sort of add a bit of a highlight to the wings. And now I'm going to go and reshape this shadow here, and I'm going to use a little bit of these feathers over here. He's got some kind of yellowy brown feathers. I'll just add a few of those in. And let's mix something up. Again, just working that underbelly color a little more. Needs to go a little bit darker. So I'm using this transparent burnt sienna color here. And I'm going to mix that in to get it a little more on the gray side, so it's just a little bit darker. And if I look at the shape of the shadow, it comes kind of up to there. It's a lot, I'm going to say it's a lot harder on this surface to blend. Oh well, no excuses. Eventually you get enough paint kind of on there, it starts to work. more of that gray mixture I had. And then there's a shadow from the wing that comes down. And I'm going to get some of that in there with, I'll use that Viridian and that black mixture just to get some of that real dark. All these spots in here, back in there. That's just a little Viridian and the black. And then kind of goes down. That shadow kind of comes in here. And there's some real dark parts of those tail feathers down there. Sort of building in this little bit more of some of the darker spots there. You can use some of this glazing medium actually will help me to kind of combine those two. So if I bring my brush stroke into that, and then kind of redo that, and some of these little edges, get them back in there a little darker. And I notice the thing I want to do is get some of that grayish purpley color and work in some of there's a little bit of a light hitting the top of the wing. And there's a few little bits of light on the top there. So you just kind of, are building, each part is a little bit of like a forward and backward with the values and whatnot. Just kind of adding a little bit more detail to the feathers on the wing. And definitely want to put there's a little feet hanging down. It's really hard to see exactly, so I'll just put a little, like little shape of, some little kind of claws hanging down. And then you want to get that shadow back in a little bit. So I want to get some more of that dark grayish kind of brown in there, and really, now that I have the feet there, I can see in my reference photo the feathers are a lot darker with the shadow going towards those little feet. So I'm just going to work that back in there. Also, they don't then look like they're just, glued onto the bird. I'll add a little more shadow underneath here. Okay, so now I'm gonna show you how I clean up the edges when I go and do the background. So I'll get some white and a little bit of that gray, and just sort of go in, and you can really work. This is where you can really shape your beak, you see, and the whole body. You can kind of go in and see. Now you've got more of that narrow looking beak that you see on a hummingbird more. And you can just kind of work around. So like over here, and same with the flowers. I really enjoy going in and shaping some of these flowers and cut into them a little. So really makes it look more painterly. But you get the idea there. It's really kind of, it's where you can really, fix the shapes of things and the edges, make them really stand out. You can go in and, shape some of these, or soften them up, so you can go and get your color, the wing color, and just sort of really soften it if with the paint, so it really, if you want it more muted like that, you can soften the edges up like that. And then you can see how rough this canvas is. It's like sandpaper. So it was a challenge of the day. It needed about 20 more layers of gesso. All right, so I'll fill in all that, but I want to just go back to the hummingbird again and show you how I'll add a little bit of a pink right here just to show the reflection from the flowers. Just put a little bit of pink in there. Yeah, this board, I definitely am gonna sand the other ones down because, yeah, if you're new to painting, make sure you're working with, a surface that's not gonna make your life harder than it is already. Like, I see the the boards, if you buy those value packs or something with cheap canvases or something from either Walmart or Michaels or whatever, which some students, they'll come in, and I know, because I know how hard it is to paint on them myself, even after years of painting. It's just like trying to run with space boots on, you just can't do it. So it's something you want to make sure that if you buy the cheap canvases, it's totally fine, but make sure you get at least 3 layers of gesso on your canvas, because it really it's just brutal trying to paint on a difficult surface. Just gonna add these little feathers a bit more because they kind of got, and I'm just using this ultramarine blue just to get it in there, but you can use anything really that's darker in value. Like, I sometimes like to use a little quinacridone and ultramarine blue, and you can give it a little more of a purple. And same with the background. If you want to make it lighter, darker to really show your bird off, you can just add, a little bit of a lighter mixture of whatever, and you can see it'll make the bird stand out even more. So always think when you're doing your background, you might want to switch to something like that, a little bit lighter. I feel like the background, it just absorbed into this board and then kind of it got a little bit too dark, I think. So I might go with something in the end that's like a little bit lighter. But I kind of like the neutral background. So if you're watching this video and you like, painting birds and flowers, you can, join my Patreon channel, or don't forget to like and subscribe right here on Insta or on YouTube so that you can, get updates and alerts or whatever when I go live. Kind of lost my wing there. And I might even lighten up those flowers a little. Yeah, canvas is just so rough. It's it's like I'm fighting against the board. So you can put I sometimes like to put a few little, marks around of extra color just for fun and just kind of play around with that. And then you just kind of look at your painting and as you go, just sort of see like, I could add more highlight to it, like a lighter value where it's just maybe gotten too dark as it dries. You can just kind of go in and put in some more highlights here and there, and then let it dry and come back to it. I forgot to add the real light part on the hummingbird's little crown of his head there. I kind of got too distracted. And then there's a little bit of a kind of a lighter part to the black here. So I'll mix in a little bit of oops, just a little bit of a light highlight there. Okay, well, I will definitely not use that rough board again. That's my excuse for the day for why this wasn't so easy, but it was kept drying up the paint too. So, but at least you can kind of see how you can go about painting a hummingbird now. And if there's something you would like to see me paint that you said you've always wanted to paint, I'll look at my comments below and you can tell me what you think you might want to do next, and I'll add it to my list. And I always like um, hearing from you and seeing what you're up to with your paintings, so you can send me a, if you do one that you really like, send one to me on an email, and I'll definitely, love to take a look at what you're up to with your paintings. And the main thing is just have fun, you know. Thanks, Heidi. I just saw a comment come up. I've never really done many live streams like this, so it's also kind of intimidating. And that was nice. I'm using my phone, so I don't really look at it while I'm painting, but then I saw someone made a little comment, so that's kind of cool. And you can always keep going and adding more detail to everything. Um, so feel free to try it out and let me know what you think. So thanks for joining me on this live stream, everyone, and I'll look forward to future painting lessons with you. And I hope you have a great weekend, everybody. And well, thanks, Susie. I'm glad that you tuned in. And yeah, feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you like, and what if you like more flowers or more birds or landscapes. And I will keep you up to date with what I'm doing. All right, thanks everybody.